Good morning, everybody. Today we have a special live stream where we're going to be learning about careers in education and how that aids toward conservation of sharks and as well as our oceans as a whole. But good morning, ladies. How are we doing today?
Good.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. So for everyone that is joining in today, from what I'm seeing on the screen to my right, that is Callie Sproul. To the person right below me, that is Erin Schulz. And then to the diagonal of me is Haley, and you might have seen Haley Curry now a few times so far on our live stream. So we have two new people as well today. So as we said, today we are going to be talking about careers in education and the different paths that you can take throughout education. A lot of people think when you say, oh, I work in education, you might be a teacher in a classroom, but there are many different avenues that you can take throughout the education realm. So we are going to talk about that today. To get started off, I just want everyone to introduce themselves and then where they work and what is your current position. So Erin, let's start with you.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Erin Schulz. I'm the Conservation Education Manager for Wave Foundation at Newport Aquarium in Newport, Kentucky. So it's just over the river south of Ohio. And my job, like I said, Conservation Education Manager. So I'm the head of our education department. I have 5 staff members that work with me full time. And we get to lead outreach programs, education programs at the aquarium, summer camps. We actually host a Gills Club event with the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy, so that's a lot of fun. And outreach is probably the main thing that we do. Lots of programming to schools and libraries and our community members with ambassador animals from the aquarium.
Awesome. Thank you. And then let's go over to Callie. Callie, what do you do?
So that's a loaded question, Kristen. Right now I am working part-time as a zoo educator, and that's my dog. I am also a dog trainer. He's right on cue. And then I have also was a zookeeper the last like 2.5 years. So I'm kind of switching over to the education world. But there was a lot of education stuff in my zookeeping time as well. So I'm pretty familiar with it. And I've been kind of in and out of the zoo aquarium world since about like 2008.
Awesome. Yeah. And for people that do not know us here, I'm super excited to have Callie on our live stream. Callie and I have known each other, oh my gosh, for almost 8 years.
2012.
Yeah, since 2012. We were college roommates, met freshman year in college, and we have been best friends ever since. So I'm super excited to have you on our live stream this morning so you can talk about what you do. And then last but not least, Haley. You guys have maybe seen Haley throughout our live streams as well. She does work here at the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy. But Haley, let's go into more of a deep dive of what you do.
Yeah, so I'm super lucky. I have 2 jobs that work super well together, which is awesome. So I work for the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy as a summer program educator. So I run all of our summer camps throughout the summer, and we go all around like Chatham and Chatham. There's some in Brewster, one in Wellfleet. And I basically just get to teach kids about sharks and the Cape Cod ecosystem and teach them about conservation, how important the species is to our ecosystem here on the Cape, and just have a lot of fun educating kind of the younger generations. I also do a lot of outreach with the Conservancy, so going to different places, different events that we have on the Cape to kind of teach also, and then working at the Conservancy Center and just teaching there too, which is fun. And then I spend my rest of the year in Salem as a high school earth and space science teacher, which is just a traditional classroom role.
Awesome. Thank you. So to further into our questions today, I want to know more about your backgrounds and how you became to your current position, because I know everyone has their own path to how they get to where they are currently. So I think that is important for everyone to hear of how you get to that current position. So Erin, let's start with you. How did you get to be to where you are today?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I love that you said, everyone has a different path that they take to get to where they are. And it looks very different for everyone. But for me, I grew up on the coast of Maine. So I just grew up with a real love of the ocean. And I just assumed I would work in science because of that. And so I continued through that with high school and college, wanting to learn about science. So I have a bachelor's degree in biology. But then in my junior year of college, my family actually moved to Cincinnati and I learned about the aquarium and I had a free summer. So I did an internship with our education department. And that's where I realized that science education didn't have to just be a teacher in a classroom. And so it was the perfect fit for me, working with our community members, working with students and getting to share about all the science that I love. So then after that, I was sold. And so I kept trying to figure out how to get a career and start a career in this field. And so I started actually, it'll be probably a common story with part-time jobs, piecing together internships and experiences. I started as our overnight supervisor, showing kids all around the aquarium all night long, was tons of fun. And then I actually went out to Connecticut for an AmeriCorps position. I got to serve as with New England Science and Sailing, teaching kids outdoor adventure sports, kayaking, snorkeling, sailing, right on the Long Island Sound there, which was so much fun. So that was sort of the outdoor education side. And then had a couple other positions, but one brought me back to Newport Aquarium. And so I now got to come back as a full-time educator, working with outreach programming, specifically partnered with local schools to really bring science alive in the young elementary classrooms. There's so often that science gets pushed off because reading and writing is critical at that age at young elementary school, but they're so curious also. So we get to bring that education into their schools and their classrooms a little bit earlier. And that's one of the big things that brought me back. So a meandering path, but it was really the key to me and my career path is really finding it. There's not a lot that we talk about with informal education and informal science. We have the term science communication now, which I love that it's getting more common because that's a whole career field that I just feel like was not present in my knowledge when I was looking for a career path that would have really, I think, changed my course earlier.
Mm-hmm. I love that you brought that up because that is something that is almost a goal and a career aspiration of mine when I graduated college was that I didn't want to be a teacher in a set classroom, but I wanted to, teach people about the oceans and our environment and sharks and having that almost like that bridge between the science community and the public. And yep. There really wasn't that word for it yet. And I love that you brought that up because that's kind of how I felt as well, kind of exploring through my own career path. So thank you for mentioning that. And then for Callie, let's talk about you and your background.
Yeah. So, a lot like Erin, I grew up on the coast. I grew up in Virginia Beach. I've wanted to work with animals since I was 5. I took my first trip to SeaWorld in like 2000. And I was done. I was set. I was working with animals. I wanted to be a dolphin trainer. I was set. So in 2008, I was finally old enough to be able to volunteer at my local aquarium. So I started there. I started volunteering as a docent, and I was working carts, just educating guests, manning the stingray touch tank, pretty much anything they would let me do. So I was there for all throughout high school, on weekends. I spent as much time there as I could just to try and get my foot in the door. And then when I graduated high school, I went to Coastal Carolina University, where I majored in marine science and minored in psychology, which sounds kind of weird, but I wanted to be an animal trainer. So I know that I needed some sort of psychology background to work with animal behavior. So I did that. I did a bunch of internships while I was in college. I worked with sea lions. I did an aquarius stint, and I worked for free for a while. And then I finally got an opportunity after I graduated to go and open up an aquarium in Missouri. So I spent the last like 2.5 years or so in Missouri. I got to quite literally build exhibits and be on the opening team for an aquarium out there. And you can see my penguins. And so I worked mainly with our otters, but we did a little bit of everything. And I worked with the penguins, and I got to kind of get a feel for education through that. And so when I moved on from that facility and came back home, I kind of started pursuing education because I really enjoyed using animals to make connections. Because as a zookeeper, I did a lot of keeper chats and things, and saw that being able to put the animal in front of them made a much more meaningful connection versus me just like talking about it without anything there. So I am currently working in zoo education, and I am a dog trainer, which is kind of a sidestep from what I was doing, but it's been really fun. And I've been able to educate people about their pets and their pets' behavior. And it's kind of a whole other form of education in itself. But yeah, it's a very strange career path. And I'm still kind of figuring it out as I go along. But yeah, it's been great. I really love what I do.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I love that you mentioned that, being able to make that connection between people you are educating, but as well as them being able to see that animal in front of them. And I do agree with that. It does make them have that deeper connection and that understanding of that animal and why you're doing what you're doing, or if it is a conservation group trying to conserve that species or learn more about that species or study that species. And yes, I completely agree that kind of that one-on-one connection is key. And that's something that I know probably Haley will go into when she talks about her background and what we do here at the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy is making those connections with people, if that's seeing these white sharks out on the water, or I'm sure Haley will talk about the dissections that she does with kids and having kids see those sharks right in front of them and being able to make that connection and learn about them through that way. So awesome. And then right off with that, Haley, want to go into a little bit of your background?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny that you guys mentioned the connections. When I kind of think about how I got to where I'm at, which, I mean, I'm 24, I just finished my master's in September, so I'm very fresh to the real world game. But when I was in high school, I went and sailed with the Sea Education Association, and that's where I saw my first shark, despite growing up on the beautiful Cape. I had not seen any sharks until I was out at sea, and we saw a mako, which was very cool. And that's kind of where I fell in love with sharks. But throughout high school, I did 2 summers with the Education Association, sailing tall ships, learning about different ecosystems, about the ocean, really just fell in love with environmentalism and systems thinking. I went to college at the University of New Hampshire, and I started as an environmental science major, and then I met Professor Joe Laird, who taught me all about minerals, and I fell in love with geology. So I kind of took this little sidestep, very closely connected, and got my undergrad in geology, which was great. I got to travel all over New England. I got to go to Scotland, Newfoundland to look at rocks, which was super cool. And all throughout that, I kind of was always torn on if I wanted to do field work or if I wanted to be a teacher. And then my junior year, I was presented with a scholarship opportunity, which allowed me to get my master's in education for free, and my senior year paid for. So I took that opportunity because it was amazing, and did student teaching in Dover, New Hampshire, was able to get my master's, was able to find an amazing job at Salem. And it kind of all just fell in where I just kept following my passions and kind of what felt right. And then getting a scholarship really helped because college is extremely expensive, as we all are aware. And it kind of just kept leading me down a path that was just more and more. So that's how I got into my classroom. And then how I got to the Conservancy was my mom actually, we both love sharks. This is her living room. We went shark diving in Hawaii together, really found like how beautiful, she was terrified of sharks. I was very nervous about them, to see how beautiful they are in their natural habitat. And then she found the Conservancy, and we volunteered at Phenomenal Fest when it used to happen in Chatham. And then we just started volunteering at different events, and then you guys needed a summer program educator, and that was another just kind of a puzzle piece that fell together. And now I get to just work with kids all throughout the year, and I get to, especially at the summer camps, teach in such a hands-on way that is so much fun. Here you can see we're at the Chatham Fish Pier, and we learned about local fishermen, about what sustainable fisheries mean. I was able to grab a dogfish off one of the boats and kind of show the kids the anatomy of the shark that we had just learned about in the classroom. So showing them in real life, and then we later dissected that shark that week. So very cool.
Awesome. Thank you, Haley. So now that we have a kind of a distinct background knowledge of what everyone does, we can see that even though we have two women here that both kind of followed an aquarium path, that, you know, they're still doing two completely different jobs within that realm. And seeing that now we already know that in education that, you know, there's so many different hats that you can put on and still be in that world. So my next question for you ladies is, since we all do have such different roles, what is your typical work day, if there even is a typical work day for anyone anymore? But Erin, would you like to start?
Sure. And I'll certainly talk about remote work. But for me right now, I actually took the role of Conservation Education Manager, so heading the education department for us in November 2018. So by stepping to manager, that does sort of pull me into an office and a desk job a little bit more than what most educators are. For me, that works really well. I love working with my staff. I love getting to be, this job puts me a little bit more on the program creation side. So I work a lot with our curriculum development and what kind of programs we're going to be leading and really sharing with our community. And so I really enjoy that. And I get to work a lot on the quality and what we're bringing out to our community, training my staff and mentoring the students who are coming through with internships, just like all of us did. And so I really enjoy getting to do that. But my job still has a lot of balance. So I'm still out of the office a lot. I go to schools, libraries, other community programs, and do a lot of outreaches. That's the most common thing that brings me out of my office. And it's definitely the highlight of my day when I get to do that. Because like all of us have said, the connection with students that we get to have in an informal science setting is incredible. So I get to walk into schools with very large coolers of live sharks. We have a mobile aquarium that we bring to schools. So I bring sharks, stingrays, and lake sturgeon out to their schools. Which is and I usually hear as I pass, I usually hear like, oh my gosh, you're the shark lady, as I like walk down hallways, which is a lot of fun. And so that's definitely a highlight for me. The other one that I get to bring often is African penguins. And so that's mind blowing to people also. So that's so much fun. But like all of us have said, like the connections that we get to make because of that is the best part. And the reason that I still do what I do and love, even being on the manager side. I think that pretty much covers a typical day. There's a balance between traveling and getting out to the community and hands-on education, working with students. And because I'm in a manager role, I have more of that coordination, scheduling programs, and working to really help facilitate my staff's skills and work on trainings.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I definitely agree. It is a balance for sure. I know in my role here as community engagement manager, there's days that I'm in the office kind of doing, you know, that office work and going through those daily steps. But then I'm also, some days I'm out traveling all day if it's a school here on Cape Cod, or I'm up north of Boston at a school or at a corporate group or a community event or a full weekend just outing. You know, it can be a completely different day. So yes.
And one thing for me that I keep in mind is it's not necessarily that I do the office so that I can do the outreach. I love doing both, because even while I'm sitting in my office, like there's such purpose behind it. We have to organize all of these things so that we can have our outreaches, so that we can have other staff, we can have summer camp. So I find just as much enjoyment in the days that I'm in my office, because I know it helps move all of our program forward just as much.
Yes, that's an awesome thing to note. For sure. I definitely agree. And then for Callie, what would be your typical work day? Let's go with when you were at your previous position, because I know you shared some photos from that. So
yeah. So kind of talking about when I was a zookeeper. You know, because that's something a lot of people want to do. I did, oh gosh, I generally would start my morning with like a little team meeting. We would talk about what's going on for the day, if we had any animal moves or physicals or anything weird going on. And then we go through and we would check on all of our animals. We would do just morning checks. So we would check temperatures of the rooms, make sure everybody was where they're supposed to be, all the locks were locked, and you know, so on and so forth, and just making sure that everyone's good and healthy from overnight. And then from there in the mornings, we would clean. What some people don't know is that like 90% of my job as a keeper was cleaning. I did a lot of cleaning. The jets, sorry. It's just a lovely part of living here. So yeah, no, I was like, we would spend the morning cleaning and opening the exhibits, cleaning fish guts off the acrylic, you know, all that good stuff. And then I normally do my morning feeds. And so I basically did everything I could to, you know, make sure that the animals were good to go for the day. And then I would go and make diets for the next day. And then in the afternoon is when I would really get to spend time educating. So what you see here was a school program I did. I believe that might have been one of our summer camps, one of our spring break camps. I did so many, I can't remember, but you know, I had a group of kids and I got to do a little keeper chat with one of our otters. That particular otter's name is Darla, and she is probably my favorite animal I've ever worked with. And so I would go out and talk to the kids, you know, about the animal, and then whatever program they were in, I would try and work some of that in. So whether that be talking about adaptations, talking about exhibit design, whatever they were working on, I would try to relate that back to it. And then in the afternoon is generally more cleaning and then checking on your animals again before you leave. But that was kind of a general day, and it's hard to say that that's what every day looked like because it wasn't. That's the biggest thing, is when you're working with animals and even in informal education, things change very quickly, and you kind of have to think on your feet, because you may have a program set for, like, you know, working with this animal in this program, and then suddenly that animal didn't wake up feeling great, so then you've got to kind of switch gears a little bit. And so I think that's one of the things that I almost enjoyed, is that every day was different. And when you're working in informal education, you have to be prepared for whatever life throws at you, because, you know, it could be raining, it could be, you know, 90 degrees outside, and you're like, well, we got to spend more time here so that nobody passes out because it's so hot outside. So it's just, you know, trying to be prepared for everything while trying to stick to a plan, if that makes sense.
Oh, yes, it does. I'm sure we can all attest to that, working in, if it is a summer camp or just any kind of program, you know, you always have to be on your feet and being able to adapt to that change really fast and just go with the flow. And I know that's been definitely our motto on some days, is just, well, oh, well, we're just going to try to just move on to plan B sometimes. I'll make it work. And it sounds like forging. And then for Haley, what about you?
So both my days look pretty normal for both camp days and school days. I wake up pretty early and I'll prepare everything for the day. So I make sure everything's all set up, all the supplies that I need, all the papers have copies, kind of set up the classroom or the workspace I'm in, to make it the most sense for what we're doing for that day. And then the kids come, and then kind of like Callie just said, it's, you know, I have a plan, and if we go to the plan, that's awesome. And if we don't go to the plan, there's so many more options that we can do. And I get to spend all day just teaching different students what I love and trying to like put some of that onto them, and hopefully they come out of it with a new passion or at least a new interest. And then when I wrap up the day, it's a lot of lesson planning, a lot of reflection. So I always make sure to kind of like write down what went well, what didn't go well, and then plan for the next day. And it's super, I mean, it's 8 hours of students. So it, you know, with camp, I have about 10 to 20. In school, I'm going to see about 80 kids a day. So it all kind of depends on what's going to happen. And it's just multiple plans, and it always ends up being okay, is what I've learned.
Yes. That is also a motto, you know, it's all going to be okay. And I'm sure we all have used that at some point in our careers, or at multiple points, at least, through our days here. So thank you all for sharing that. And my next thing, you know, we just heard so many great aspects of all of your jobs and, you know, what you do each day. But I want to know, what is your favorite thing that you get to do, or what is maybe a favorite memory about your job? So Erin, we'll start with you.
Oh, it's so hard to pick usually. So I'll start with like my favorite general thing, and then I can probably come up with a favorite moment. So in general, my favorite is the connection that we get to make with students. And I use that term really broadly. I'll say community members, since I often go to libraries and see adults and families. It's not always just like a K-12 student. But we get to make connections on so many levels. You know, Haley was just saying, kind of pass some of our passion to them. And when you see those moments is absolutely my favorite, especially working here in Kentucky right now. There's a lot of our community that's never going to see the ocean or hasn't yet seen the ocean. And so us bringing a shark to them is truly the first time they felt salt water. And growing up on a coast, that was a really foreign concept to me. But kids are really like, why do my hands feel weird? And I'm like, well, salt is drying on your hands. And so it's really fun to like really make that connection for them. Also connecting them to conservation and realizing that even though a saltwater ecosystem is nowhere in their sight, what we do here in Kentucky, Ohio, and Indiana still impacts the ocean. And so Callie said it as well, you know, bringing the animals to people and allowing that one-on-one connection really does put our actions in a broader context. And so I think that's my favorite part of what we get to do. It's, I think, the reason I skewed towards education in my science passions, because I love the content of science, and the keepers and the aquarium staff at the aquarium always see me lurking behind things happening because I want to learn from them. But I really don't have like this desire to go back into being an animal care staff, because I would so miss the ability to really share that knowledge and that experience with our community. So that's my favorite part. If I were to think of one single favorite moment, at one point in one of the programs that I do, it's called the Living Curriculum Initiative, and I bring the sharks to a school 3 times in a row. So it'll be like 3 weeks in a row. And the kids get to run their own experiments. So they get to ask questions about the shark, make observations, and then think, you know, what would happen if we put something different into this exhibit with this shark, and how would it react? And so on my second visit, I had a student, she was so excited. But I was asking the whole class, like, do you remember what we did on the first visit? What are we going to do this week? And she tried to raise her hand, but as she raised her hand, she was too excited. You could see it in her face, and she just blurted everything out. We all have student experiences like that, I am certain. But I can still hear her voice in my head saying, like, we get to run experiments with sharks today, and I'm so excited. And it's just such a concrete moment that you could just see, like, she had so much knowledge and experience last week that it carried over, it stayed with her. She knew exactly what we were gonna do this week. She could not hold it in. So it's just seeing those moments of real joy with the students and connection that just carry you through every day that gets challenging. Every time we get to plan Z and we're not sure what to do next, those moments carry us through.
Yes, I agree. What, Callie?
I said plan Z.2.
Yeah. And then going off of that, Callie, what is your favorite part about your job?
Yeah, so very...
The Jets.
Gotta love them. So very similar to what Erin was saying. It's hard just to pick one moment. Anytime I'm able to connect a guest with an animal or an ecosystem and I can see that they learned something, I felt like I did my job. I really enjoyed being able to, for more specific example, I got to help develop our penguin encounter, which was super fun. We had 17 Gen 2 penguins, and they are so funny. But being able to bring people into that exhibit and then kind of immerse them into that, cold environment, and they can smell the penguins and hear the penguins and see them like right in front of their face. It really lit people up. Like they just would get so excited. And, it was one of those things where like, I knew I was like talking about the penguins and they may only remember one thing I said, but they're going to leave that caring more about the animals. And that's kind of my main thing. And even if it's just they go home and start looking up more facts because they can't remember what I said because they were so excited, they still are putting in the effort to learn more, and to learn more about how they can help. And that's kind of my big thing with conservation education is I want people to take home the cute animal and learn about its environment and what they can do to help it. And that is like one of my bigger goals as a keeper and an informal educator in the zoo or an aquarium or wherever, is making that kind of one-on-one connection with people. And I think one of my bigger things too as a keeper was explaining my job to people. A lot of people have misconceptions about animals in zoos and aquariums, and being able to kind of turn things around for them and explain to them that these animals are here for a reason, serving as ambassadors for their species, and that they are, taken very well care of. And it was nice for me to be able to talk to people not only about the animals, but how I care for them, and that they are not being mistreated. They are very much spoiled. I was like, they eat better than I do. I would be making salads for some of our like tortoises and stuff, and I'm like, I can't tell you the last time I ate a salad. And that was like my big thing is I was like, I like talking to people about the animals and having them make connections, but also, making sure that they left knowing that like those animals are okay too. But yeah, I was like, I think that was kind of my main things. And there's the jets again. Sorry, guys. But yeah, I was like, I think that's kind of my main thing. And I think Erin and I both kind of have similar things where it's just being able to make sure that whoever we're educating leaves learning something. Even if it's just kind of a newfound passion for an animal or an environment, or, just a little fact here and there that makes them then go and look into more, and see how they can help just with little things in their day-to-day lives.
Yeah, awesome. I think that's everything you said, great to note and to mention about making those connections with people, and those connections do stay with you. And I know I have those as like as my motivation throughout days, and there's some days you just like, and just having those in your mind definitely is your upkeeper and your uplift for that day. So Haley, your favorite part about your job?
I think there's two major parts, and I find them in both my jobs. The first one is I love learning. That's why I went to a 4-year college and then did a post-grad. You don't do it if you don't love it. And in both my jobs at the Conservancy and at my school, I get to learn more. I've learned so much from the Conservancy about sharks, about ecosystems, about our fisheries, about seal populations, stuff that I never knew. I've been able to learn, which is I'm so thankful for. And then at my school, just even sometimes during my prep, going to a chem class or popping into a math class to kind of refresh on things that my kids are asking me during study hall that it's like, oh, I haven't done mold in about 4 years, but I'll see what I can do. Learning is one of my favorite things, that even though I'm in a professional job, I'm an adult. maybe. I still get to learn and keep going. And then also, kind of like everyone else has said, is those connections that you have with your students, with the people that you're teaching, when they get the idea or the concept, and you see that kind of light up on their face. When they fully understand it and grasp it, there's just no better feeling in the world, and that's amazing. And my favorite memories are for the Conservancy when people come in, kind of with conceptions about sharks, which is totally fair. Like a lot of people, like Erin, you said about not seeing the ocean, people who come and they don't live with these beautiful creatures, and then they kind of go through our exhibit, they talk to us, and they leave having this huge respect for these creatures and a different idea. And that, I think, for my Conservancy part of my job, just makes it every time when someone comes in, they're a little off-put about them, and then they leave and they're just like, wow, these are amazing creatures, they're so important to our ecosystem. I'm going to try to eat a local fish tonight at wherever I go to eat for our tourists. That just, they get it, and it's so cool when someone gets it.
Yes, I see that. It's the connections that we all love, and so that's great to see that theme. But we are kind of nearing the end here of our interview, but the very last thing I want you guys to talk about, you guys just gave awesome advice to everybody, and to talking about your background and how you came to this, but is there any last thing that you guys would like to add on, if that's advice about schooling, or maybe getting experience, or maybe something that you learned along the way that you would feel would be great for the people that are watching that are interested in education to know? So we'll just start again with Erin. We'll just go down.
Sure. I think the biggest advice that I usually give people who are interested really in, it's pretty much a lot of the sciences, especially if it's not medical school, is that this is not a linear path. My family, at least, I have two brothers, and both my parents, my two brothers are both educators, classic educators in schools, and my parents were both in the medical field. Those are very linear career paths from college on. And so they know what their next step is. And this is not a career path that the next step. All of us said that we sort of fell into things. I think it was Haley who said you just kind of took the opportunities as they showed up. And almost everyone I've ever talked to in a career field of informal education, science education, aquariums and zoos, animal care, you just sort of find your way as you go, say yes to a ton of opportunities, say yes to anything that shows up. But know that if you don't know what the next step is and it's not clear, that's okay. That's normal. There's not a set undergraduate, graduate, there's not a set path. So find what works for you. Someone else, it may have actually been Caitlin, follow your passions. Those are going to lead you where you're supposed to be. And so it's okay if it's not a set path. Just keep going, keep trying new things, say yes to the opportunities would be my biggest suggestion.
Yes, that's great advice. And that's something that I've kind of kept to my, it's my own little motto is trust the process. And, not everyone's process is the same. It's all different. That was me. I didn't know that I was going to have my internship up here in Cape Cod until about 3 weeks before I graduated college. So, I was freaking out, and Callie can attest to it because she was my roommate, and that, we've all been there. Yeah, we've all been there. So
now you love it here and you're never gonna leave.
It's the best. I made my career. So, everyone has their own process indeed. So Callie.
Yeah. Kind of echoing both what y'all said is that I never imagined that I would be messing with penguins. That was never in my mind. I was never I'm going to go and get to help start penguin encounters. That was never on my career path. And so my biggest thing is just to put yourself out there and do as much as you can to, put your face in front of people, volunteer, get to know people. And if you put in the initiative, it's going to help you a lot. And that was one of the things I learned through my internships. Is my very first one, I kind of took didn't take enough initiative. And I think if I did, I would have been on a different career path. But I learned from that experience and it led me to where I am today. And I'm super happy with where I am today. The biggest thing is just, networking, meeting people, taking the opportunities as they come up, because you never know where that's going to lead you. I've met so many people through my journey, and I've learned so much just from the people I've worked with. I've learned a lot about myself. And when you're finally that one that's sitting there teaching a younger educator, younger zookeeper, you're like, am I qualified for this? But the answer is yes, you are, usually. And so it's, I think that was one of the more like kind of light bulb moments for me, is when I was, like 2 years into zookeeping, and I was like, well, what do I do now? And I'm getting to like pass on information to new people coming in. And I'm like, am I this person now? How did I get here? And so it's like you blink and suddenly you are someone's mentor, and it's like, it's crazy. The world moves fast, and, just enjoy the moment you're in and take in much advantage of the opportunities that you're given. Especially if you're going into like the zoo or aquarium field, people aren't going to hand you things. You have to work really hard, and you have to take initiative, and you have to really put yourself out there. And I learned that kind of just going through it. But I wish I'd kind of known that sooner. So I hope that helps someone.
Awesome. Thank you. Great advice, Callie. And Haley.
Yeah, so something I tell my students all the time, so my seniors who are confused, which we all are, if you're passionate about something, you can make a career out of it. I love rocks, and I love sharks, and I love the environment, and those are connected, but they are definitely not something that one job fits. And it was something I was passionate about, and I'm able to do both. And if you're passionate about something, there is a niche out there. There's a job that you can find. You might not get paid for it for a while. You might have to do internships, a lot of volunteering, but eventually you can get there. So if you're passionate about it, and if it's something that makes you happy, you got to do it. If there's one thing this whole quarantine has taught me, is how lucky I was to have a job that every day I woke up at 5:45 in the morning and I was stoked to go to work. I was happy, I was excited, and like I still am. I still get to work with my students just over the computer. But if it's something that gets you out of bed and you are so happy doing it and it makes you happy, it doesn't matter what the end of the day, like if it doesn't pay as well, if you're gonna have to move for it, if it makes you happy, it's totally worth it. And then if you're going into college, if that's the route you're choosing, which you totally don't have to, scholarships. Apply for any and every scholarship you can. I applied to one. I was just looking, I'm cleaning out my childhood bedroom. I found scholarships I got in high school for stuff like the fire department, the police department, just apply. Even when you're in college, find your college advisor, say, what are scholarships I meet the criteria for? Apply. There's it doesn't seem like a lot, but $500 here, $1,000 there, it adds up. So
$500 to cover a book.
Exactly. Yeah, maybe two if you're lucky.
Yeah.
So if you're passionate about something, just go for it and accept that being happy is the most important thing, and doing something you love, it just radiates out. And then always apply for scholarships. Always.
Yes. All great advice. And I think we all touched on, getting that experience and just trying to, get your hands in a little bit of everything. And that's something that I always like if I'm in a school with older students or students that are just getting, starting out looking in career exploration or looking into colleges, is that, get that experience. And I always like to say, figure out what you like to do, but also figure out what you don't like to do, because you know, if you had gained an experience, you realize, hey, I don't like to do this, but you are going, you know, to gain knowledge and probably use it in information from that experience to help you out in furthering your own life and your own career. So I will just add in my own little piece to that. But I just want to say thank you, ladies, for joining us this morning. I think this was great. And I hope that you guys all out there today watching gain something from this and learn a little bit more about the different career paths you can take in education in the science and conservation world. But do you guys have any last words before we sign off?
Just thank you guys for tuning in. It's so much fun.
Thank you so much.
And thank you all for watching, and happy Friday. Bye, guys.